Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey.
You can't let anybody not acting the way you want to, you can't take it personally.
Nah. Like anything I do, like anybody I paint, I always go into it with a deep level of knowing that this is what influences me, and the only thing I'm looking to get out of it is, I put it out there and it's out there, right? I put all of myself into it. Like if someone acknowledges it, that's like extra.
Yeah, exactly. Because then what is the purpose of you doing it for?
Right.
If you're just doing it for like the clout of whatever.
Right.
Your heart's not in it.
Nah, like your heart's not in it if you do it for that reason. And the whole reason I got into it was because, I needed to find like purpose, and it started with myself. It never started for any other reason, And so like all the things that I paint today are just things that have influenced me in the past, like music, currently movies, I'm into horror movies. So I try to incorporate all of that, because that's what I grew up on.
When did you need to find purpose, or when did you find purpose, and why did you need to find purpose?
So that's an interesting question, because I kind of find purpose twice, art's always been a thing. I took a class when I was 14 by this dude, Bruce. Shout out to Bruce. He's got a little purple house over in Marlboro. He sells his panties over there, but he used to teach classes early 2000, and I learned all the essential stuff over there pretty much, shadows, shapes, dimensions, how to be like authentic, while you're doing it, putting emotion into it. So shout out to him. But I figured it out twice, when I was 20, I ended up renting a warehouse over in Framingham. At the time it was like 08, it was like $120 a month. And I started there, but I didn't really have direction then. Like I had a lot of influence. Like there was a lot of shit influencing me, like music's always influenced me throughout all my life. But, I was listening to a lot of like Little Brother, Ninth Wonder Production, DJ Premier, and, I was hip to Hebrew Brentley then, and following all that stuff. Dawes Green is a huge influence on me, like huge impact. I was buying Echo gear with his art on it back in like 99, So all that's shaped me into now.
But you got the warehouse just to do it, like you had
just to do it because I was living with my parents at the time, and I didn't want to make a mess. It was an apartment, so, and I was actually living with my parents, but then I moved in with my girl, and there was really no space. And then she got pregnant with my son, my first son, and I kind of shifted gears. I was just like kind of making excuses, unfortunately, I shut that door for like almost a decade. You know what I mean? I was like, damn, I'm having a kid now. Like, there was no one really around me to be like, yo, you can pursue your goal. Like, there's a smart way to do it. But I was just like, had it in my mind, like, I can't play with crayons anymore. It's time to go get a job,
Yeah.
And raise my son. So I got into that. I got deep into sales for a while, and kind of like.
Did you believe that yourself? Not to cut you off, but did you you really thought there was no way, or was in the back of your head you were like, but one day I will go back?
I think in my head I was just like, I gotta get my stability straight, and maybe I'll revisit this, right? But for whatever reason, there was also like a mental clock in my head, like, for whatever reason, I always like put a timeline on shit, and like put like, like looking back on it, I didn't need to really stress out as much, right? Like I just needed to like stay the course. But it wasn't until I was like, went into work one day And, I'm an account manager at a tech company right now, but I was just at work one day and I'm like, okay, like, I'm pretty stable. Like I'm making enough money. Like everyone's good. Like, is this it? Like it just felt like, it's not to knock people that go to work. Like I go to work every day still. I have 2 jobs, I grind it out. But for me, it felt like, damn, I'm putting like, I'm wasting my talent. Like there's gotta be room for it. So
how long ago was that?
It was around when I was like 30. I turned 30. I had my second kid already, and I'd been like sketching in my sketchbook for a little while, here and there, but just doing like abstract shit, like with like words and stuff, like nothing like it is now, like kind of more avant-garde shit, but not really, just trying to like stay sharp, like drawing like trees and like birds and like making sure I know my shadows and shit.
Why?
But it wasn't. What's up?
Why were you trying to stay sharp?
Just because it's just for the love of it, dude. Like I've always loved it. Like I've always loved art. Like I've always been deep. I've always been a wild consumer. Like if you were to look at me in 2003, I was listening to Planet Asia. I had my fucking Osiris Hymn 3s on, skating, drawing in my sketchbook, doing graffiti, listening to Deftones, doing all that. Like my life is just colorful, traveling, going to Brazil. My parents grinded it out hard and they would bless me with summer vacations, and a lot of it was just like suburb kids, but it made me more well-rounded. Like I got a different view on life. Like I saw kids that were so humble. They were doing like 360 backflips off of like 5-foot ledges. And they were like 12,
Yeah.
So you see that and you're like, I gotta, I like this shit. Like I love this shit. Everything, skateboarding, music. And I've always just been well-rounded, and that's always shaped me to want to stay sharp in my craft because I always appreciated craft. Music more than anything, Like in the 90s, I had a cousin who lived with us, and he had a shelf, and it was just all CDs and cassette tapes. And every day I would just listen to a new CD, Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, Bone Thugs, Fugees. And all that shit just shaped me, artistically. And so I think when I turned 30, I was just like, damn, I'm ignoring this whole other side, right? So many things were inspiring me. And I'm like, damn, I just was at work one day and I was like, all right, I got this shit down. Like I can do this shit anywhere. Like I'm grateful for the job and everything, but I have this skill now. Like, and then I think about my legacy too, because I got 3 sons. And when I got into it, I knew I was getting into it because at the core of it all, I wanted to leave a good legacy. Like you can do your shit, like you can do what you love. You can make time for that. If you really love it, you'll make time for it.
I think that's a big thing that inspired me to chase, because I like to look at like, why am I the way I am? My dad's a drummer, and even with jobs, even with like going through a divorce, like even with everything, he stayed playing drums, and he still does it to this day. He probably has a gig like today or tomorrow,
right?
Like he stayed with it. And I think that was the thing that even in the beginning, it's just like you just can't ever give up, and you kind of make it.
Right.
Like you make it if you don't give up. It to the degree you make it is up to you, but if you don't give up, you're doing it.
Right.
And that's the whole reason for starting, is to say you do it.
Right. And I think I agree, dude. And I think a lot of it too, what I was seeing at the time was like, I started putting pieces together, like as technology got more like, I got more hip to Instagram, and seeing guys that were doing things older, right? They're still doing their stuff, and it's like there's no, because you grow up like when you're in your 20s. I don't know if it's for everybody, but you think like you have to achieve you have to be at some sort of level, right? When you're 30 or you're a bum, and it's like you're not a bum as long as you're pursuing your dream, right? And you're putting your all into it, like, and that's how I viewed it. And once I had that unlock, like bro, there's no timeline on it. Like, if you love this shit, it's greater than time, right?
Yeah.
Because every time I put a piece out there, it's timeless, right? It's out there in the world, right? There's a digital image, and that shit will live. If someone really cares about it, it'll live past me. But am I gonna, I used to sweat a lot about like, damn, I'm not producing enough. But it's like, I don't go on anybody else's time. I go on my time,
Yeah.
And I think anyone that's great does that. Like, right? Like, you gotta put in the work, but you gotta know why you're doing it. And you gotta know, like, because if you do that, it'll surpass any sort of scene or time, or, right? It'll just live on. If you really put your heart into it, that's what I believe, because good art gets recognized, and it's subjective too. Like, you can fall in love with something and someone else cannot be in love with it at all. But for me, I have to put it out, right? Whether it takes 2 weeks, 2 months, I'm going to work on it and I'm going to complete it and put it out. All right. I might like it 60%, 70%, but I'm always going to put 100% into it,
Yeah. I think about, and I've said this on the podcast before, but I think about, all right, Conway's debut major album release, God Don't Make Mistakes, album party I was at. And it was also his 40th birthday party.
Wow, dude.
Like,
that's crazy.
If that's not inspiring as hell, like, if that's not how I think about it, it's like he was 40 and he had, like, it doesn't matter if you're just it doesn't matter it doesn't matter other than the time you put into it. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, someone could live 60 and not live half the life of someone who was like 28, Right. Like, I meet people who've never left their area, not even if you can't leave your area, but haven't explored their own mind.
That's wild.
Right? Like, people who just are...
Yeah.
That's what did you say? What was that term you said? Excessive consumer?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
It's like, I get mad that I can't read every book and see every movie and listen to every album. I get mad that I can't go to every concert. I get mad, like, because I just want to experience life to the fullest.
Right. I think a lot of it for me was, there's a saying out there, a lot of these life coach guys like to throw it around, and I think it holds some weight, but you are who you're around, right? Like, you become who you're around. And I think growing up for me, it was very well versed. I was in my hometown with, the guy, we were all into like hardcore, growing up listening to Glassjaw, those guys had a huge impact on me. And the guys the 3 other guys I was around, when we started our band at 16, that influenced us, and I was into all that at the time. Thursday, I saw Thursday live in 2003, in Springfield. I was in a band when I was 16, driving up to Springfield, watching shows. So my life's been colorful from the jump. Like, it's just been very dynamic. And then on the flip side, I'd go and hang out with my cousin up in Framingham. They'd be bumping like Dipset, rocking the stand tall tees, and I was the dude with long hair and gauges,
Oh, really? You had gauges?
Yeah, man, I had gauges. I had long hair. I've been through a lot of different phases, but I just been inspired. But I've always been so open-minded musically and from like an art standpoint. Like I've always been open to it. Like at the same point I was into all that. Like
So you really did feel like you had to like shut it down at that point when you were like, you know what, I have to hang it up.
It was weird. It was like I did feel that way because it was a weird time. Like, you know, it was a weird time. Like it was kind of like a recession time, and I just felt like a lot of responsibility, like having to take care of my son. So I shifted gears for a little bit. Like that's the wild part. I did shut that door for a minute, you know, and it wasn't, you know, I know you referenced the Alchemist book a lot, but like I had my omens, you know, and a lot of my omens like came in little ways. You know, I was living in an apartment that didn't really have room for that, like for me to like do the art shit and like, you know, really like do it confidently. And so, you know, that was always an excuse, you know.
Yeah.
But then I moved to this spot and there's a little nook over there. I got like an office space. That was like an omen. I'm like, the guy came in and showed me the apartment and I saw that corner. I'm like, that's going to be my lab, you know?
Can I show the painting you had gifted me?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Appreciate you.
It's incredible. And thank you. This is the first thing that my literally the only painting I saw when I walked in there. Of course, then I looked up and I saw the ones I knew, but it was that the nook. I get that it's the omen, like the
because
the creative omen, and that's coming with the art that you're creating.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been an opportunistic person, you know, and I saw it as like a opportunity to be like, all right, like I'm going to do all the shit I have to do and some, like, and I'm going to find, and it took me a while to get in the groove of it. I mean, I have 2 jobs, you know, I have kids, I have 3 kids, a wife, you know, and, it's a balance, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I think, who was it? It was like Tinker Hatfield, the dude who designs the Jordans. He said it best, like on the abstract, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but he said it best. He was just like, you gotta experience life to come back and do the art. And so like, you know, I'm more about absorbing life experiences. Like my kids inspire me, like my family inspires me to like experiences with them, like living life, like going camping, going to the beach, you know, outdoors, all that stuff inspires me to then go back and do the stuff that I like, you know, and listening to the music and taking the time to watch the movies with the wife. Like, I think a lot of times people try to say that shit's like procrastination. It's like, nah, you need to consume shit to create shit.
Yeah. Judd Apatow in some interview said that he needs to like fill the trash can up to empty it. Yeah. It's like he has to like live life enough to fill the trash can up to need to empty it with like create. And then it's like, all right, now I live enough to get it. And then I create. Right.
Like that makes perfect sense to me. Like, you know, because you can't, it's like driving a car in an empty tank. Like it's not going to work, you know, and, you know, that's what kind of fuels me. Like, all right, like, you know, I had some fun times. Like, this is what I took from it. Like, I might be inspired. You know, I get inspired by the sky a lot, you know, because it represents a lot, right? For me, it always grounds me. Like, you know, like life is special and the shit is like amazing. And like, and so like, you see that a lot in my art. Like, you know, we tend to limit ourselves in our head, but like when you look up, that's a reminder that like, you know, you can't necessarily box yourself in. You can't be too boxed in. Like the shit's vast. Like possibilities are like, if you really like put your mind to it, like put your mind to something, like you'll get it done.
Yeah,
you know, for sure.
Where did the the Mr. Rybbons idea come from?
Yeah, dude. It's a lot. It came in a lot of ways. Like it was a concept that I put a lot of time into, and it was just basically like the ribbons is almost like a reflection of like an energy, like a cultivation of an energy that like I had to cultivate for myself. Like, and that was just like, you know, when you see those ribbons come through, that's like basically like that breakthrough energy. Like you know, you realize that like you don't need to box yourself in, and like, you know, shit, you know, there's a flip side to, you know, fear, like the fear of like doing certain things. And like a lot of times we tend to restrict ourselves and box ourselves in. But once you do it, there's a lot to be learned from doing it. You know what I'm saying? And like I've had a lot of life experiences. Like I've done a lot of different jobs, been around a lot of different people, and you learn things. Like you learn to not be like have a lot of fear. Like I've taken a lot of risks to like, you know, understand life. And like once you realize like you really are in control of shit, like it's game over. And that's really what that is. Like when the ribbons come out, it's representing like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're overcoming your fear pretty much. You know, and on the flip side of that is like endless possibility. You might see skies, you might see, you know, you might see like dark skies or whatever, stars.
Was there a moment that came to your head?
It was through a lot of pondering and like revisiting like the whole purpose of it and like the whole meaning of it. And, you know, after I revisited it, I realized like it'll resonate with me forever. So I'm gonna pursue this. I'm gonna pursue Mr. Rybbons because it represents something that can always resonate with somebody at some point in their life, you know?
Yeah. Do you remember the first one you did, or?
I think the first one I did was the one I gave you.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, no. Like the first one I did was this one of a woman's, like it's like kind of like black and white, but like in the like when her face comes out, like it's like a blue sky, like that was the first one, you know. And after I did that one, I was like, yo, I'm just gonna run with this, you know. But then I also had an epiphany too, and I was just like, I can take this in different ways. Like I don't have to just box myself into that. So like I kind of create that identity through color too. Like I might not do ribbons. Like I might do a drawing that's like doesn't have any ribbons at all, because a lot of times like the colors that I see and like the colors that I put into it and the way I draw it and the way I put it out, like I feel like that is enough. Like that should be enough to be like, I know who from that came from. And like I want to have that ability too, you know, because I see a lot of artists out there that they run with an idea for so long that who knows if they want to, you know. I want to be able to be flexible, and people.
Bernard talked about that with the Simpsons characters.
Yeah, like, you know, I might paint an artist, like an underground rap artist one time, but I might turn around and paint Liv Taylor with a knife in her hand. Like, it's whatever inspires me, you know.
Do you know where your ideas come from?
It's like I'm constantly thinking about ideas, and the ones that I hang on to that linger in my head are the ones that come out. But I constantly have ideas. Like music inspires me, movies, you know. Yeah, there's certain art out there that's game changer, you know, and that kind of influences me. Like if it's really impacts me, then I'll put it out there.
What impacts you? What about a certain thing inspires you to create?
Music, a lot of it. life experience, and just like.
But what about like a certain piece of music? Like, why did you paint Esti-Nac Aldivino?
I painted Esti-Nac and Aldivino because it was like I was on like once they came across my ears, I was hooked on. I proceeded to go on like a 2-year bender, almost like listening to them every other day, and it was just like I think the overall freedom and like just avant-gardeness of it and like like it influenced me like in the same way that Planet Asia inspired me back in 03 with Definition of Ill. I respect, like I was bumping that shit, downloading that shit from LimeWire, you know, and I was listening to fucking, you know, Above the Clouds, right, by Gangstar Premier, and I get that same energy from them now. So like I just gravitated toward that. Like even the newer song that he has with DJ Shadow, that shit reminds me of like some like Above the Clouds type shit. You know? Like that kind of vibe. Like so natural, so introspective. Like that shit inspires me deeply. You know?
It's hard, and I don't mean to put you in the hot seat with that, but it is like an indescribable energy that makes you like certain things.
I would say so.
Like it's like
energy. I can compare it, but it's gonna have a different resonance with different people. Like when I say it reminds me about the cloud, like that's just my view on it, right? Like, but like it could inspire you in a different way. You know, for me, it's just how free they are with it. Like it's unique in its own, right? Anything that's unique in its own that sticks out, right, inspires me, and I just feel like people are putting their best foot forward when they do something like that, when they take those kind of risks.
And it can be even broader than that, because listen to how you describe the sky. Like your inspiration of the sky is way more than I get inspired by the sky.
Right.
And how you describe, but that's not some work of art that someone created, you know, like,
yeah,
that's not some song. It's just, we have these certain affinities that might be from things from our childhood, probably.
Yeah.
But it's the indescribable energy.
I agree. Like there's things that affect me in certain ways that like, you're right. You really can't put a finger on it, but you just gravitate towards that. And like, I've always been like with that, with music, with anything, with art, like, you know, like I gravitate and really like get into certain things at a certain time. Like, I mean, you know, there's certain art that's stuck with me like ever since I was a kid, and it's just because like they put that indescribable energy out there, you know.
What about neon? What about the colors you use?
The colors I use is more like a lot of what I, you know, stuff that I seen like coming up, but it's mostly just how I see it in my head. Like those colors, you know, it's not so much like neon. Like it started off with like green and yellow, you know, and like I've always gravitated towards the color green, you know what I mean? Like I can't tell you why, right? Like there's no like real special, like I was a big Ninja Turtle head, still am as a kid, but
yeah, you have a huge Ninja Turtle collect. He has all his artwork and then a wall of Ninja Turtles and the Alchemist right in the middle of it.
Yeah, like my whole childhood wrapped in one, right? And that's just it. Like what you see is just what has influenced me and what still influences me today. And I don't try to put any limitations on it. Like, you know, like I do when I don't, right? Like I'm trying to hone a certain brand and a certain idea that holds true to me, and I feel like holds true to other people, like, you know, and then on the flip side, I'm trying to do whatever I like to do, you know, and I might put it out a certain way, you know, certain colors, right? The neon, you know, the neon eyes really has purpose, like, because in certain ways I look at people like in a godly way, like the way they do things, like how they move, like it's kind of like superhuman, you know, like the amount of work that Currency does. Like I painted a picture of Currency, you know, that idea just came in my head and I literally just had to lay it down. Right. And that's why I painted Estinek and Al Divino that way, because, you know, when they're putting that level of skill in there, it is kind of like a godly thing. Like, and that's, you know, so that's kind of like where that idea came from. Like paint it how I see it. You know, like like when you see a superhero get fired up, like their eyes light up. Kind of like that.
Do you think you see the world differently?
I think I see it in my own way. I think everyone has their own version of it. Right? I just have mine. Like I embrace
as a visual artist though, cuz I don't see the world like that. That's why I'm so enamored by art, is cuz like my brain literally can't wrap my head, like I can't wrap my head around how you could do that or how anyone could create art.
Yeah.
Like cuz my brain just works in why. So like this whole time, every podcast, I just sit here and my brain's just thinking a question and I have to tune in so I don't go off on some crazy tangent.
Well, I think when you love something, like when you really love something and you make a decision like, all right, like I love this shit so much, I have to pursue it one way or another. I mean, I have every reason not to do this shit. You know what I mean? But I do it because I didn't want to ignore it anymore. Like I couldn't ignore my omens anymore. Like I couldn't ignore my subconscious. And if you love something so much, you take the steps to learn, right? Like I'm still learning. Like I'm not nowhere near where I want to be. I feel like I'm just starting. Like I just started to figure out a lot of shit, and it was through taking the time to learn, right? Like going on YouTube, learning how to make acrylic look a certain way. Like, you know, can I use colored pencil on this shit? Can I, you know, how do I make it? Like all these different things, right? That people need, like putting in the 10,000 hours. Like I'm still nowhere close to 10,000 hours, but I'm going to do it the best way I can. You know,
do you enjoy your own art?
I do. I enjoy it because I strive, like I put it
afterwards looking at it.
Yeah, for the most part, I do. Like, I do, because if I don't like it, I just don't like to look at it. Right. So if I can look at it and every time I look at it, I'm content, like, all right, I did my thing right there, then I'm good and I'll put it out. But there's things where like halfway into it, I just get frustrated and I just like throw paint on that shit and I'm like, or I'll just like literally like carve a hole in it, you know, just to get that energy out. Like, all right, like the shit is like start over, like get it together a little bit, you know?
Cause it's so hard for me to listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
Like to listen to how I talk is so like nerve wracking, but this is my art, you know, in some weird way, but it's like, I'm not content with it, but that also keeps striving to push me forward. Like,
yeah. I mean, I would say it is your art. I would say it is your art. And I'd say there's a difference between contentness and like when I'm good with my art, like that doesn't mean I'm content. Like I said, like in the same way you can't stand to look at yourself, but you continue to work and do your podcast. Like I see you grinding out there. It's because there's something driving you, right? There's something driving all of us. And so, you know, for me, like, you know, I just keep it moving. And like, if I, like I said, if I don't like it, I start over. And for me, it's just like getting it down and putting it out there. And I think that's really the fulfillment. And the ideas, they never stop. Like I can't even keep track of all the ideas that I want to put out there. But the important thing to remember for me is like, you got to just look at it short term and long term. Like short term, you got to keep doing this shit, like put in the time, put in the work. But long term, like for the most part, like there's time. Like some of the greats, like at least in my world, like some of the greats are still killing it. Like their legacy is crazy, right? And they're like 60, still doing it. Like if you love the art, like you'll do it until you can't anymore. That's just my theory.
You're talking about, again, it's the like, where do you think drive comes from?
I think it's from like self-awareness and like paying attention to yourself, like being in tune with, I think it comes with a deep self-awareness. Like a lot of times people, you know, there's always that big question mark, like what is your purpose? Like at least for me it was, you know, and you know, and it's not that I needed to have some sort of purpose, but it was just like, it's like if you have a certain energy you need to get out, it's going to get out one way or another. Like your brain's going to try to figure it out. Like, and for me, it's like, if I don't do art, like it becomes a mental, like once you turn that switch on, you can't turn it off, right? You got to feed the beast one way or another.
Yeah.
Right. If I really need to do, I might get up at 4 a.m. and paint, you know, or I might stay up late and paint, you know, or I might paint like whenever I can. But if you, like I said, it comes back to just that, right? You can't, it's an energy you can't stop. Like, at least in my view on it. Like once you understand it, once you're in tune with yourself, you got to pursue that, you know?
What was your purpose? Like when you were younger, what did you think it was?
I think in my mind, I always knew that, like, I mean, I was interested in art at an early time. Like a lot of the artists I got into was through like books. Like I got like the art graffiti book, and that was like the first example of like people that were doing art as like, all right, people are like pursuing what they love, right? Like that's giving them purpose, right? I was seeing like Ferreira and Dawes Green, you know.
It's funny you say all these names, and I get but I don't know them. But it's
yeah. I mean, look up Dawes Green; he's a legend, right? There's pictures of him breakdancing in front of Andy Warhol.
And this is all graffiti, you said?
I mean, Dawes Green is beyond that, right? Like just like Ferreira, I feel like is beyond the graffiti. But I got hip to all of them through
the graffiti,
the art graffiti books, you know, like, you know, because I was a kid, I was, you know, I would half read books, but if it really intrigued me, I would get a book. And that was one major book that I kept for a while and studied, was like literally the art graffiti book. That's what it was called.
Davino was talking about graffiti, and that's a lot of people, that's a huge early inspiration for them.
Yeah.
And before, I don't think I got it, but I think I'm starting to understand it. But what about graffiti? Like,
yeah, I mean, graffiti for me, I think was just always there. Like I didn't come from it. Like, you know, I came from like the suburbs, like, but like, you know, you go to Framingham, right? And you go and you see like those like, you know, see graffiti, you know, in the certain spots. I don't know if they're still there, but that was inspiring, you know. And I hung out with this kid when I was younger, like when I was 14, like he did a lot of graffiti. He was like from Brazil. His name was Daniel, and he was just really into graffiti. So like that kind of influenced me. But I think,
is it because it's art in the places that it's not supposed to be? Is that the?
I think for me, it was like attached to a certain culture that I was into already, which is the hip hop culture.
Yeah.
And the skate culture, and like it was like a part of that culture. So it like inspired me more to be into it, you know what I mean? Like I was always into art as a kid, you know, like early on, but as I got older, I started to see like pockets of art that would inspire me, like graffiti, you know, like seeing it in skate videos, you know, seeing it in clothes. Like I remember I had I remember I got hip to Dawes, and then I saw his art on an Echo shirt, and I was like, oh shit, I started connecting the dots, you know, and I started like getting acclimated to like all these different artists, and you know, and then you start to understand what the art world is and everything like that. And And so like, you know, eventually you try to like adhere yourself to that. Like, you know, I had a deep understanding of it like early on. Like by the time I was 20, like I said, I had a art studio. I was there for like a good year, trying to figure things out, playing around. Like I didn't have a direction really, but I was inspired by like, you know, Basquiat, of course, you know, but different people, Dawes, and trying to understand how I would put my own spin on that, you know, and then like, and so that's always kind of stuck with me. And then, like I said, it went dormant for a little bit, and then I was like, all right, I gotta like really give this a second shot. Like it went hand in hand with the concept that shaped my concept today, you know, and it'll forever change me, because had I never had that breakthrough, a second breakthrough moment, I might still just be doing my job, like not doing any of this shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you remember, like, okay, you had that thought, but what was the omen that changed? Did you have an omen, like something that showed you the light?
Yeah. Like I said, I had like the first omen I had was just like, I remember just being like just so inspired that I was like, I gotta do something, you know, like I gotta like I just have to paint, right? I just remember just having that urge, like that, like I had to paint, because I just think with anything, like, you know, either you consume something and it inspires you, or it doesn't, right? Or you just appreciate it and move on. I was always the guy that would consume something and say like, all right, how can I like put my feel on that? Like I've always tried to consider myself in that artistic expression. You know?
I would go to comedy shows when I was younger, and afterwards, it's so funny. I didn't know the feeling of inspiration. Like,
wow.
I would go to comedy shows like 16, and I'd love it so much that my head would hurt. Like, my whole body would be in pain because I was so inspired, but I didn't know how to, like, I was too dumb to realize I could go and do it. But I have vivid memories of literally, like, leaving comedy clubs with, like, my head itching.
Wow,
being
dude.
like,
that's
what
incredible.
the fuck? Like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know what inspiration was. I didn't know that I could put it out.
That's crazy, though. That's crazy. Like, but that's cool that it inspired you that much, you know?
It did.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, is it the right thing?
Yeah, dude. I remember the first time I saw, like, the Basquiat movie, like, the one where, forget the actor's name, right? Like, but I remember just, you know, understanding, like, his grind in his life, like, alone, that shit was inspiring. You know, it's basically proof that like you can have something out of nothing.
Yeah.
Like as long like, and he was doing it right for him. Like that's why it didn't matter, right? He was putting it on cardboards and whatever, you know. But yeah, man. I mean,
I think that's what this whole podcast is about. Is I don't really care about like interview questions.
Yeah.
You know, I don't prepare anything. I just want to know who the person is and like what their story is in a way that's maybe other people can listen and be like, well, I have that same energy. So if I have that same energy, then I can use it the same way and feel inspired.
Yeah.
Like you can listen to someone can listen to this episode and be like, well, that's how inspired I am about art. Or you can listen to a rap episode and feel that.
Yeah.
Or you can listen to a podcast, a producer episode. Or like anything. Like
yeah.
Rap. I mean, horror. Like I had the director of the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre on, which I loved. Aldovino shit on it.
Oh my
Did
God.
you see that part? That was hilarious.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I
thought it was over the top, right? But I like the creative risks that people take, you know, with certain movies. And so like,
you like horror?
Oh my God, dude, I'm a big horror head.
You like gore?
I like more like spooky shit. Like I don't know, like I don't know. I'm a big Strangers guy, like the original one. Like
that was really good.
With Liv Taylor. Like I feel like that's a classic in my mind. I don't know about other people. I think it was like it was mixed review, but for me,
I love that one.
That shit was always crazy. And then recently, I know Nicolas Cage goes crazy, but he did Mandy. For me is like a classic, like visually, and just I don't know if you've seen.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'll watch it tonight.
I'm not.
Mandy.
Yeah,
I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah.
See, this might be ignorant on my part, but seeing your artwork, I assumed you liked gore. I don't know why, because the Rybbons aren't gory, right. But like
I do. I admittedly I do, right, in a weird way, but in the way that you're right. Like I like all the Devil's Rejects movies.
Did you see Terrifier?
Yeah, I love all the Terrifiers.
See,
yeah.
All right, the Terrifier 2 was amazing.
My girl couldn't sit through it, but it was like a cakewalk for me.
I'm getting.
Yeah, dude, that's what really. What inspires me more than anything are the fucking like when you're scrolling through like Netflix or like the shit on the TV, like the drawings the guys do for the covers, like the Terrifier covers, like that shit alone is like that's like a unappreciated art, like and when you see that, like but like and then watching the movies alone, like I'm into all that, but yeah, horror I love.
Do you like animated movies?
Akira, I'm a big fan of Akira for sure.
I just watched this. It was a Christmas one, but it won some Academy. It was called Klaus. Yeah, it was like the origin story of Santa Claus or whatever. But it was actually really well done, and the art on it was. I watched that, and I've been watching a ton of animated movies just because of that one.
Dude, animated movies are wild.
But you're also a parent, so I feel like you have a different relationship to animated movies than I do.
I'd say probably the all-time classic, and I could be wrong, but like the heavy metal movies. I don't know if you've seen those.
No.
Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. Go back and watch heavy metal, and then watch like the second one, like the anime.
All right.
Some wild stuff. Like I was watching wild shit when I was 9 years old in the 90s.
Oh, I actually might know what you're talking about. I had a TV in my room when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I used to wake up at like 4 a.m. before school and put on like Adult Swim when they had those like crazy anime shit.
Yeah, like,
and that definitely affected me.
Yeah,
and then I'd like watch that from 4 to 5 and then go to sleep until 6.
Yeah, dude, just watching like a devil woman with like tits and shit.
Yeah,
like, what the fuck is going on, bro?
Yeah. How is this on TV?
I'm watching I'm in the living room with my friend. We're watching a woman with devil tits. Right? Like, what is this, right? Like crazy weird shit, man. Like I gotta go back and revisit those heavy metal anime movies. But yeah, man, like I gotta get back into anime. Like Akira always stood out to me. Like
I just watched that for the first time like maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, I always loved that shit. Like that shit's always crazy. But I don't know, man. I always, for me, it always changes. Like, I'm kind of obsessive in certain ways with things. It might be music for a while, and then for a while it might change and be like movies. It could be anything. Like if it's really good, and like you said, it has that undescribable energy. That shit. I pick up on that. And
what are you obsessed with right now?
A lot, man. I'm obsessed with a lot. Like. I'm obsessed with like the New York rap scene right now. I'm obsessed with like all of it, right? Like, like just everything, man. Like a lot of it is stuff I've always been obsessed with. Like I still tap into, all my my top artists that I looked up to, still look up to. I always check them, and they always inspire me for different reasons. Like, like if I paint you, it's because you had a huge impact on me,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's really it. Like, and like with movies too, like I plan on trying to put more of that into it, and like I said, it's a lot of different ideas, but it's just, trying to control that beast, because it can get overwhelming, like getting frustrated, not being able to like put all those ideas out. You know, I think that might be an issue for a lot of artists. I don't know, you know, but for me, it's, you know, it's a lot of different things that inspire me in the end, you know, and then, you know, like the way I make art is similar to how someone would make music. Like they take different ingredients from certain albums and sounds and everything and put it together. But, you know, in the end, like it creates something that is beyond what those ingredients were, you know?
Yeah. Do you mean like you can't, a lot of artists, it takes so long to paint something that you want to have so many ideas that it's hard to, like your brain moves faster than your hand?
Pretty much. I mean, at least for me, you know, because I always try to maintain a certain level, like, you know, like I always try to push myself. Like there's a certain level of like competitiveness into it too. Like, you know, I always want, like, if you're not looking at my picture more than, like, if you see it and you don't scroll back to see it, like, then, you know, I gotta, like, you know, for me, I gotta, like, really step it up, you know? And that's,
I keep going back to your page, so that's funny you say that.
I appreciate that, man. And, like, you know, that's how I feel about certain art or certain music. Like, I might be stuck on a song for, like, 3 weeks if it's really that good. I might play that shit out. And it never gets old for me, because if it's great, it's great, you know. And then, and the same goes for art. Like if I really love that, I'll stare at that shit for like 10 minutes, you know.
Do you have an artist you're most inspired by right now?
It's tough to say. It's tough to say.
Or do you have someone you are inspired by of all time the most?
All time. You know, I would say all time is probably Dawes Green. Dawes Green has always been an inspiration for me. Like I said, I picked him up one day in a graffiti book, and I've learned more about Dawes throughout the years more than ever, because he just puts little ingredients out there. But the dude was like part of like the breakdancing movement, you know, late 70s, early 80s. He was, you know, breakdancing for Andy Warhol, like run around for Futura, like all this crazy shit, like did a lot of stuff in Brazil, and you know, has had a crazy influence on me. Like, you know, I always looked up to him, but I look up to a lot of people too, like a lot of other people too. Like, you know, there's a lot of them out there, a lot of legends out there, you know.
Is that why you went to Brazil as a kid?
Well, it's my family, you know. My family's like part of that, like they're Brazilian, so it's like my heritage, you know. They came here,
yeah,
in the 80s,
but for inspiration, like artistic inspiration, that's where you drew it from.
Yeah, I drew like there's a lot of different ways like I drew it from. Like there was like a Brazilian artist, like rap artist, like his album was done by Dawes, and that was like stood out to me, you know.
Yeah.
And then I like, you know, you start putting the pieces together, like, oh, dude, that's the dude that did the, you know, art on that album. And then like, he just had that much more respect for him. Like he was connecting with people in other countries, like in the 90s, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on, I'm just going to shut that door.
Oh yeah, no problem. Damn, we've been talking for almost an hour already.
I know. Time flies when you're having fun, man. But, you know, I appreciate it. You know, you coming out here, showing love.
Of course, man. It's cool being from Massachusetts.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like, it gets, even though there's a lot of stuff here, it gets overlooked a lot. Or I feel like if you're in Massachusetts, and maybe this is anywhere that's not a major city, you feel like, how can I be a part of it? Being from somewhere else, but you can when you just do it, as we've said this whole
right. And a lot of this area is like inspired me. Like, you know, Massachusetts has had a big impact. You know, like a lot of my life here, a lot of different experiences here. You know, like, you know, going to Worcester early on. You know, hitting up the Palladium, going to a lot of shows.
Craziest night at the Palladium.
Dude, there's been a lot. Like I was a show rat back in the day. Yeah, I seen them all. Like You know, I seen a lot of different bands over at the Palladium. You know, the craziest one was probably that I always gravitate to was I saw Thrice and Coheed and Cambria. I want to say in '05, and that show was crazy, right? And you know, those bands are. You know, I still listen to those bands. You know, I don't listen to them that much now, but like I grew up on a lot of that music early on as a kid, while listening to hip hop too. Like I said, always been into like the diversity of it. But yeah, I went to a lot of shows. You know, like I was in a band when I was younger, so I was, you know, running around doing shows, and you know, I've always had love for this area, like with the art scene, the music scene. So.
The first time I ever saw titties was at the Palladium at a Tech Nine concert.
Oh,
you know, like I saw them on the internet before, but the first time I saw titties in real life, a girl, like 3 people over, flashed Tech Nine and threw her bra on stage. And I saw titties for the first time, and I'll never forget that, the Palladium. I'll never forget that.
Dude, my boy I went to school with in high school was probably there. My boy Sean, he was a big like Tech Nine head. He was really into
technician.
Like,
I think that's what they call it.
Yeah, and he was big into like who were the 2 clown dudes? What's
Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, dude, he was a big.
I don't like that. MGK opened up for Tech Nine, which was crazy, and then MGK got like fucked a blow up doll on stage. It was a wild night.
What? That's crazy.
I was like 13 years old. Like I saw titties. I don't want to see MGK.
That's crazy. Yeah, dude. I've been going to show like that's the thing as a kid. Like you've been going to shows. So I remember my first show was like one of my early shows, like a Newfound Glory concert. It was like a free concert. I skipped school at like 14. My buddy knew some girl that he met at like Journeys, and she was like 16, and she picked us up, and we just went to like a fucking Newfound Glory concert in Boston, and I just remember like just being so high that I just stayed in the car
for the whole concert.
Like, everyone got out, and then like I was just in the car, and then like 20 minutes later, my boy came back and just smacked the window, and I just jumped, and I was like, he's like, bro, get the fuck out of the car.
So you saw the concert,
bro? I saw the concert. I got stuck in the car. I got squeezed out of it. I lost my van shoe. Ended up having to go dig my shoe out of the mud.
Oh no!
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I've been always going to shows ever since. I remember I went to the early like Warped Tour shows. You know, I went to that was a wild experience. Like I think all those experiences like just shaped me as a kid. Like those are some of the best times. Like like just that shit was crazy going to the Warped Tour. But those are good times, man.
Man, thank you for doing this.
Dude, I appreciate you coming out, man.
Man, I appreciate you. I appreciate this so much. I do need you to sign it before I go.
Oh, definitely, bro. I'll definitely sign it for you.
But no, I thank you because it's an honor to sit down. I'm happy we got to meet, and hopefully, we see each other again in the future.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Where can people find your shit?
Just go to at Mr. Rybbons on Instagram. It's Rybbons with a Y. And you can find my stuff there, and check me out.
Man, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Peace out, everyone.
Yeah.